And thank you very much, all the friends who have taken time off from their evening, Saturday evening, to be with me. And we are all together in this beautiful journey into art and architecture and many other things beyond that. Uh, uh, Also, I have to thank Deepika for a very, very generous introduction, which, very quite frankly speaking, uh, is not entirely factually correct. Because besides other things which she has glorified, uh, let me correct her that I did dabble in some painting, but they were so horrible that I've hidden them under the bed or in the attic. And the other thing I can't do well at all is I can't cook for nuts. I can only make chai. So there are many things most of the things I can't do, but all I can say is that I love venturing and journeying into different, sort of realms, and it gives me a lot of satisfaction. Now, coming to the sort of theme of today's evening, uh, you see, this idea was the idea for this lecture of this topic was really sown in my mind or in my heart uh, last year, very significantly, when the world was celebrating the 500 years of Leonardo da Vinci's death anniversary. So the whole world was agog, and there were many exhibitions held. There were many seminars, and the media was full of them. And I also took time to, connect my thoughts together and write something. But and before that, also when one is growing up, you read about Jews, the futurists and wonderful people who made inventions. Leonardo had, created many things which later on proved true. So there had been a sort of passing knowledge of him. But last year was a very big bang thing. And before that, I remember the novel and the movie Da Vinci Code, which of course spread a lot of misinformation about the man also. Now, the idea that was sown last year, and I discovered wonderful commonalities, similarities, parallels, congruities between two wonderful people. Corbusier has been, of course, a part of every Chandigarh architect's DNA, and also, the growing interest in Leonardo da Vinci and his various accomplishments. I discovered that they were sort of, in a certain way, Corbusier was perhaps an alter ego, a later day alter ego of Leonardo. And but I must confess, Leonardo is too much of a giant, and they can't be compared in the canvas and scope of the things that he did 500 years ago. But in my limited understanding of the world, Corbusier comes the second best. And so, therefore, and as Deepika very rightly said, that, today I am determined to crack open the Berlin Wall that is often created between art and architecture. We are connected with an umbilical cord, and actually where one stops and the other begins, I think it's only in the books or in the hearts of academicians. Otherwise, it's all an extension of two realms which combine together to make the world so beautiful. So, taking this uh, topic of discussion, I dread calling it a lecture because I am not at all. I must most humbly say that I am no scholar of art history. I am not an artist. I am not even a philosopher or a intellectual in that mold. And I'm not a Renaissance man, as Deepika was kind enough to paint me with her brush, because it's a great thing to have a lot of students who do very well in life. So Deepika has been kind enough to wield a very beautiful brush because of my having been my student. So with these words, I would like to straight away go on the screen and walk you through a visual journey with my comments, and then we can regroup for a discussion, because I see so many amazing gurus in today's evening, like Mr. Prem Singh, Professor Bhim Malhotra, Mr. Jyotendra Bhatt from Ahmedabad, and Anil Thakur, Punita Thakur from all the way from Australia. So I'm really truly honored, and I'd like to now share the screen without much further ado. दीपिका आपने डिसेबल कर दिया स्क्रीन हेलो हेलो
Yes, I'll just do that. I'll just do that. Hanji, sir. Now you can, sir.
या ओके oh, just hold on, I'm starting from the wrong end. So the cat is out of the. You have already seen the last screen. if you want if you want me to finish soon, then I can straight away go to. Okay, so here we are. Everyone can see the screen and the
Yes,
title
sir, we
sheet.
can. Yeah, we
Okay,
can.
so uh, there are a few. I'll keep looking at the clock also, and Deepika can give me a rap on the knuckles if she finds that I'm going on for too long. Now, Renaissance men of their times, and in fact, Leonardo is the original Renaissance man, because it was when he flourished, when the time he was on the world stage, it was the Renaissance period. And Renaissance, I mean, without going into semantics of the word, of the term, because it's a much larger term, and architects are history students are familiar with the term, the Renaissance era, Renaissance architecture. But simply it means rebirth. And because the world was coming out of the Middle Ages, which were rather dark, and a new burst of intellectual activity and philosophies. So Leonardo, and also it means that a total man. And Corbusier, who came 400 after years him, was another amazing person who changed the entire, who impacted the whole world. And on the left hand side, this is the only existing image of Leonardo himself, though he painted the whole everything under the sun. I mean, he sketched or observed, but there are there is no other. Uh, there is this self-portrait that also is not 100% sure, because he was not a man who was recording for personal glory, but he was recording rather for the discovery of understanding the mechanics of nature, the world, the phenomena. I'll come to all that. And good old Cobb needs no introduction. So I begin with Florence, because Florence was his Karam Bhumi, and just as we would say that Corbusier's, land of destiny was Paris, or rather Chandigarh also to some extent. But Florence, which is the Mecca of art and architecture, uh, you know, this is an image not of Leonardo. He hasn't come to life with, but a street artist who has been photographed and walking on the very close to the Piazza Signoria, where all the great things of the Medici era happened. And now the interesting thing is that uh, the way to describe Leonardo and people like Leonardo and Corbusier and other versatile people is a wonderful term called polymath, which doesn't mean that mathematics taken to the square of, 517 or something, but it simply means that it is a derivation from a Greek term, that a person who has a wide understanding and encyclopedic knowledge or understanding of many fields. So, and he's such a when the more you try to find out about Leonardo, you just get zapped, and you can't believe that such a man in flesh and bones was walking on this earth. He was, just to list it out, he was an inventor, a drawing and painting, sculptor, architecture, science, music, mathematics, engineering, literature, anatomy. The list is, this is an incomplete list. There are more things he could do. So let's go on a journey with him, and side by side we'll intersperse his journey with Corbusier's journey, and you find that it is uncanny similarities. And of course, the canvas is small, but regarding Leonardo, the best description of the man that I came across, Sir Kenneth Clark, the great historian of art and art history and the world, called him the most relentlessly curious man in history. So we are all curious to some extent, but this man never stopped being curious. That's like a childlike quality, which I think we forget in growing up. Now, I'm going, one sort of alternating between the two giants, the two polymaths. Corbusier was born on 6th October 1887, and quite interestingly, he also had no formal training, and Leonardo also had no formal training. He didn't, at that time, of course, the systems were also different. One went to join a master's studio or workshop, and then you learned under the tutelage of somebody. Now, Corbusier also didn't go to any formal school of architecture, and he learned most of the things by insatiable curiosity, observations, studies of the world around him, and he also dabbled in synthesis between mathematics and human proportions, art and architectures, geometry and human dimensions. He left behind a compendium of 32, amazing corpus of work. You feel that in his 75 years, did he have time even to eat food? And he was a man with so many interests, curiosities. So these are, I'll have to limit my comments on each slide, keeping in view of we are not on a time machine that I can take you. Uh, Now, this is Leonardo's town, the beautiful, Florence, Frenzia. And I can proudly share with you that most of the photographs are by me. And this is from the famous angle when you go on to the Michelangelo Hill. And from there you photograph, and you can see the Florence Cathedral, or the Duomo as it is called. So Leonardo is born in a small Tuscany village, and it is where this all is where Florence is, and Pisa. This all Tuscany area with semi hills and a lot of vineyards. And Leonardo was born to man. His father was a notary, which was quite a thing in those days, and but he was born out of wedlock. So he was truly, actually, if I may use the term, he officially didn't have inherit the name of his father, because he was born during an affair of his father with a village peasant. And so he was brought up in this Vinci. There's a small town called Vinci near Florence, where he was brought up, and that's why he got the name of Leonardo da Vinci. So now, but at the age of 14, his father brought him up. He could see that the young, boy was very prolific in sketching and paint. He would observe things and keep on and tinkering. He was making some small, machines also. So, like a typical boy of his age with a lot of prodigious, curiosity and skill, his father thought that he will be good to be taken to Florence. and he left him with a very famous, in those days it was not silos. This is architect, this is engineer, this is what you call a sculptor. This is not people were, there were workshops. And actually Bruno Lassi was the man who had created this sacred cathedral of Florence. It had been built, but it didn't have the dome for many years. So Brunelleschi is the man who sort of gave it the dome. And he was his father brought Da Vinci to Florence, which was at that time full of wonderful thinkers like Alberti, Brunelleschi, the man. They were architects, and carpenters, goldsmiths, everything together. Now, these are the people who really influenced him a lot. Alberti was a scholar, and who had written a lot about philosophy, mathematics, art, architecture. He even designed some buildings. And Vitruvius was a great thinker, writer of the Roman era, and he had left behind a volume of books called, in Italian, the Architectura, which meant 10 books of architecture. And Brunelleschi is the man who made the very difficult dome over that. And Andrea del Verico, is his workshop was doing. He was basically a goldsmith, but come a painter, come a sculptor, come a the theater designer set. So everything, these people were his gurus. Also were versatile and poly maths, if I would say. But Leonardo left them all behind. Now, uh, Leonardo, while working in the Varicose workshop, did learned a lot of things beyond what his master could teach. And he studied how the dome had been built. And below is the famous, where you have the Palazzo di Verico, and there is a Galleria. And we were all there 2 years back, before the good times when the corona struck and stopped our travels. But one of the things on which he worked directly with Verrocchio was, I don't know whether you can see that at top of the dome there is a pinnacle, and there is a golden looking ball, which was really a copper ball. And I'll show you a better picture of it. And that was done by, whereas the dome was built by Brunelleschi, the Verrocchio was given the job of making that ball. And and the problem then was how to make a crane to lift such a heavy thing. And so young Leonardo got a first direct experience of making it and installing it. This is a very stunning view. Now you can get an idea that what is the scale of this, that ball which we saw from distance. Actually, it's a copper ball which is gilded. And yeah, this is not a picture taken by me. There are some very telling pictures which I must tell you have been taken from the National Geographic, which brought out us a very beautiful feature on him last year. And I immediately collected it. So this gives you a scale of the ball. Now, while Leonardo was learning and picking up things, by working with the masters, his workshop. Corbusier, who basically was trained in art at his hometown La Chaux-de-Fonds, and his teacher as planter, he saw that he had great curiosity and interest in architecture, and he encouraged him to rather become an architect. And his first commission, he's a self-made thing without any formal training. So he started doing his early works for in his hometown. But one of the key things he did at a very young age was he made numerous journeys to backpack journeys through East European countries, through Italy, Greece, which were the most, Istanbul, and these were very, and he filled up his sketchbooks, notebooks with such precise, prodigious. If you look at this, his sketchbooks and Leonardo, who left behind so many sketchbooks full of observation, even the background paper is of the same sepia color, and the sketchbooks of two people, really, really stun you that how they could be doing the same thing, and none of them had a formal degree, or at least, Corbusier, when courses were there. So the learning was through travel, through working with mentors. You can see some of his more sketchbooks, and he then wrote a book, Voyage the Orient, which is because he backpacked through East European countries, went to Istanbul. From Istanbul, he went to Greece and saw the Parthenon, and there he was stunned. He just sort of spent a lot of time, and then he went to Rome, where he sketched and sketched, and then he went to Pisa, to Florence, to Pisa, and these are very quick impressions, but full of even postcards to his mother, when through his travels. Where he would write less but sketch more. So they were like more like picture postcards created by him. So it's how uh, curious mind can learn. This I've just showing you some few from his sketchbooks. When he came to Chandigarh, how he was fascinated by, even by, the mud huts of the villages around it, the bull, and he was particularly fascinated by the horns of the bull, which are crescent, a form which he later on used in some of his, the assembly canopy, and people. I mean, that is of course historians' conjecture, but he would sketch at seashells, bones. A lot of cones were there in his hometown. So everything he saw, nature. Uh, Now, Leonardo's notebooks are in thousands, codices, and they're all spread out because he was not a good bookkeeper, and he never wanted to. He wanted to publish a book, but he never came down to it. But one of his disciples, who had been collecting his sheets, he had them, bound. And if you remember that movie Da Vinci Code, you will remember that the Vatican Library has so much of his work. And interestingly, a lot of his work is in the Royal Library of the Windsor Castle, the Britain's rulers. They have one of the biggest collections, and they exhibited. So, but leaving aside that, look at, besides other things, he would study the flow of water. How does water behave in a whirlpool? How a fetus, he was a forerunner of sketches of human anatomy. He would at night, he was given special permission to do, to cut out cadavers and, mire them, observe them. And what he left behind is such precise records of human anatomy that they are to be, even the today, the present day doctors, are stunned that such kind of, up to Gray's anatomy is a very famous thing, but he was the original human anatomist, and he would record and record. And he also had a very cryptic way of writing his observations. I don't know how many of you know that Da Vinci Code is mistaken for some mystery behind in his writing, because he would write not in a normal way. He was a left-hander. He would write from, he would write in a mirror script, reverse. To read it, you had to, see it in a mirror. And of course, people attribute that it probably was he was trying to hide his knowledge from his rivals, or probably one of the theories is that because he was a left-hander, he had to write from right to left. Otherwise, he would have smudged the ink. So there are all kind of theories and mysteries also. And this is a little collage, which I again took from a published source, that look at the range he is trying to understand: flights, helicopters, he's trying to make airplanes. This is the famous Vitruvian Man. I'll come to some of them. He's very fascinated by the flight. Then he's trying to create war machinery, an early version of tank, gears. You name it, and he's tried to make a gigantic bow and arrow. You name. He was a military engineer of sorts. He was also a musician and last, although he's known most famously for his painting of Mona Lisa, and he was most generally thought of as a painter, but he was 100 times more than the painter. Then, they simulated some of his inventions and tried to actually have the modern scientists and all have tried to reconstruct some of his things. A swinging bridge, if you please. A fly. He was very, very fair. He would go to the bird market, buy a lot of birds, and then free them just to see that how their wings were flapping, so that he could understand the mechanics behind the motion of flight. And he tried many models also. And so this is the mind of a prodigious, compulsive observer. He recorded that in nature, I know I'll just go back. In nature, nothing is unnecessary and nothing is done beyond what it needs to be done. Every organ, every part of every part of nature has a role to play. Now, similarly, if Corbusier, though he was born in Chafond, his Karambhumi becomes Paris, and he came and set up a studio, and he had a lot of struggles, in his times. And if Florence made Leonardo, then Paris reinvented Corbusier. He changed his name from, his original name was John Ray's, I forget now, some Charles, John Ray. So he had a studio with a very tiny corridor space, and he was surrounded by his creations, where he spent. They say that the first 1.5 or 2 hours of every day, he would first paint and then come to the architectural studio. Now, Leonardo, on the other hand, is not just an observer, an anatomist, a scientist who's trying to create flight. He was also an architect, and it was a great era of architecture. And he was an architect who was wanting to take many commissions. He had gone to Milan. He wanted to, because Florence was not giving him many opportunities for his work. So he applied for a job with the Duke of Milan, Sforza. And there was a competition had been launched to create a lantern tower of the original. The cathedral had been built, but there was no lantern tower. So he made a very elaborate application for getting a job over there. And he wrote, first 10 pages, he wrote that he could do this, he could design bridges, waterways, cannons, weapons, all kind of things. And in the end, he writes very casually that uh, like ways in painting, I can do everything. He just mentioned, has a very casual mention in the last, after 10 pages. Likewise, I can after that I can do the bridges, I can do all that. Likewise, in painting, I can do everything. So there was no modesty or lack of self confidence. He remained in Milan for quite some time, and he joined hands with Bramante, who had designed the St. Peter's, and another architect. At that time, artists, architects, they were all, sort of with multiple talents. But Leonardo no one was a human anatomist or looking at bird flights and waters, patterns. And he was looking at everything, light, optics. I mean, you just feel that how can so much one do in one life. And he conceptualized numerous designs for century planned churches. These are his designs. He made about 70 designs and he said that they would be built, but those were dangerous time. The Duke of Milan was always going into getting into war with other city states of Italy, and also with Paris, also with the rulers of France. So none of them got built. Similarly, you find that Corbusier, his early works, I mean, as a self-taught architect, are of his uncles, of his parents. This is the house of his parents. He made them go bankrupt. They had to sell it off and then make a smaller house. He designed a smaller house near the lake, Villa La Lake. And then this is a house he made for some friends of his parents. Look at the way, because he in those in those that area, his hometown, lot of pine trees, and his father would take them for trek. And it's a beautiful Jura countryside, full of Swiss Alps. And he sketched pines a lot, and he turned pine cones into decorations. He made art and architecture blend even at a very early age, so that there is something, he saw a divine connect between the two. Now we come to urbanism. When we call Corbusier also as a Renaissance man, new beginning, because he changed the way the world thought of architecture. He changed the way the world thought of cities, city plannings. It's a because the architectural, most of the world was still following pseudo, neoclassicism, the Greek styles and the Roman styles and the Byzantine or the Gothic. They were blindly imitating those styles. He said that the machine age is there. Aeroplanes had been just been created. Ships were there. He said that the new world needs a new kind of architecture, and we need to create a new idiom for it. And his turning point was when he made Villa Savoy, in which he established 5 points of architecture, liberating the different floors from the load bearing walls, raising it on columns, having connecting to the landscape through ribbon windows, using the terrace for as a garden, and you made the rooms as you needed. It was not dependent on the. So these are, he called it a new doctrine, and doctrine of architecture. And he made a huge multi apartment housing at Marseille Habitant, Unity Habitant. And so he changed, and the rest of the world, he became a torchbearer, trendsetter. There were a few other compatriots with him, like me, architect friends know Mies van der, Frank Lloyd Wright in America, and Walter, Gropius. So these people, modernists, they were called. But Corbusier is in a way, he was the main leader and the pioneering spirit, and he almost created a movement, and that's why he's called the Renaissance man. Now I'm taking you, kind of side by side the journey of Leonardo and the journey of Corbusier to make a comparative analysis kind of thing. Now, on the other hand, Leonardo is also very interestingly is also a cartographer. He because he's good in painting and sketching. There were no drone pictures or satellite pictures of Google Earth at that time. But since everyone was at war with all the time, Italy was one of the richest countries in the world, and Florence was the first city of bankers. But so were the city states of Venice, because there was a great trade. It was a great trading port. And then there was the Naples, city state of Naples, city state of Milan, city state of France, now of Florence. So they were constantly at war. So the Milan duke who had hired him, he gave him the commission. He made a wonderful map, so which is almost like the job of a cartographer. He also mapped a town, small town, a walled town called Imola. So he emerges as not only as an artist, architect, or inventor of things, but he also steps up as a cartographer and you can say, this is the first step towards urbanism from in his times. And now, not only that, it is so interesting because Milan suffered heavy casualties, like we are having a pandemic now, and the whole world is being struck by this demon of corona. And we are all over the world. There are, seminars and people are putting their heads and saying that let's visualize the post-pandemic city is going to be very different. So similarly, Milan at that time was hit by plague, and it was because it was very filthy. It was Leonardo wrote in his, in one of his notebooks that Milan is packed like goats, filling every face space with the fetid smells. So he said that Milan has to be, designed. A new city has to be there, and he look at the flight of his imagination. He says that it will be on two levels. The lower level will be for arteries of the circulation, water canals will be there, and it will be for the services and the commerce. And the upper level will be beautiful, upper level was designed for beauty and people and pedestrian life, which would have wide streets, arcaded walkways, flanked by beautiful homes and gardens. It's almost, you feel as if it's Corbusier doing, and these are his sketches, which are showing you, that you have it's almost like Corbusier's city for 3 millions, where he said that the services would be, movement systems would be. And Leonardo also writes the same analogy that the city is like a human body which has circulatory systems where the blood flows or the communication flow, and there are the organs are like the head, the stomach. So the analogy is very, very fascinating. Corbusier had used the same analogy. Now, then, besides doing a replan for Milan, he even designs an ideal city like Corbusier to make his presence felt about the urbanism that needed to be redone. And he made two hypothetical schemes of city of 3 million, the vertical city and the radiant city. So even Leonardo created an utopian city, which was to be done on the pattern of Milan, and a new city was to be along the Ticino River, which because the transport would be very easy. And this is the front one is not, of course, his sketch. It's the Italian architects, somebody, I forget his name. They tried to simulate from his notes. They made a model of his ideal city. On right hand side, you can see his sketch, and that's another. Somebody else made a portrait of. Now, Corbusier's, he visualized new urbanism, vertical, the city of 3 million, the radiant city. And Chandigarh is almost, to some extent, a horizontal avatar of his urban concepts and ideologies, which was that, city, people should live in light, sun, space, and verdure. That is sun, light, ventilation, and greenery. The garden city done in a vertical way. Uh, I'm looking at the clock also. Uh, so now, but I come to one of the most talked about interesting things of Leonardo. And look at what he had written. He had a great love for mathematics. Again, like Corbusier and Leonardo, they find that the human body, it has there is a relationship between its proportions, between its various limbs. There is and Corbusier, of course, went on to design a modular man, a complete scale for harmonic proportions. But uh, this had been attempted by Leonardo also 500 years ago. Now, because there were writings of Vitruvian which had suggested that the human body had proportions which are related to its parts, and there he creates this Vitruvian man, the ideal of the male human body, where if you are standing like this, the spread of your arms is equal to the your total height, and if you open your legs and stretch your hands a little, then and if you take navel as the center, then the human being is also can be contained in a circle. And there was a so he solved the riddle of squaring the circle. And later on you will find that Corbusier went on to develop this thing much further, and based on the golden ratio. So he but one common thing is they both find that mathematics or geometry is, the human body is a perfect machine. Nature, he would call, Leonardo would call nature as the perfect machine. And so they found anthropometrics to be having a link with mathematical. Corbusier's work, we are of course very, Chandigarh is blessed. I mean, we are very fortunate because, sorry, he created, Corbusier create, sorry, it's slipping, he created the need for him and to create the modular man, or to create a scale of harmonic proportions. One is that when the music plays,
We have lost voice.
Yeah, I
actually,
think there's some.
hello,
It will be back soon. Yeah. Yes, sir. Yeah.
can you hear me now?
We can, sir. We can. Yeah.
Okay. Uh, because it will take one full lecture to design, or maybe many more. The modular man, in a nutshell, is that he wanted to create harmonious proportions connected to the human body, the various limbs and the functional aspect. So he created that if a human being was sitting easily, then this was the dimension required, so that they could be used in application of designing the perfect interior or space. But this was all based on the golden ratio. The symbol of phi, if you know, phi is a golden ratio, is that if you have a square, I mean, if this is a this line, and then you add on another dimension to it, geometrically, we all know that you can do it by
Hello.
if you divide this and
Anji,
then
Anji,
draw,
Namaskar.
so the ratio of this line over the this larger section is dimension called 1.618333. It is an irrational number. Artists, architects, photographers intuitively know that a center focus is not good, but if you create a little division like this, which is called the golden ratio, and the Greek symbol of phi, so that is a harmonic, that is a division which is always very beautiful. And he then, Corbusier, created a human figure, and it took off 6 feet high. And then if you divide this into the golden ratio, you get a blue spiral. And if you take the half of it with the extended hand, and that is a red series, and if you join them together, a spiral is evolved, which is also there in the Chandigarh Architecture Museum. In the Chandigarh Museum, you can see the extended hand. Then he applied it to undulatory glazing, the planning of Habitant, at Marseille. So he actually tried to, even the Capitol complex, people have tried to, create, put a graphic representation of the golden ratio. And it was consciously there. And you can see the golden ratio explained better on this mathematical diagram. That is a square of A and a rectangle of B, and they can be further subdivided, and you will keep on getting this helix of a shell. And Leonardo's famous painting Mona Lisa, even that has, there's no proof. He hasn't left a note which says that he was trying to put a golden ratio. But interestingly enough, golden ratio, if you even the Greek buildings have been found to be following something close to the golden ratio. This is 1.6180333. It goes on. And I can only touch upon this wonderful thing, but I hope that it establishes interest in people to find out more about these things. Now I'm coming to, the at what Leonardo had said, that likewise I can do everything in painting. Now this is the world's most famous painting, and actually when you stand in line for hours and hours and go to Louvre to see it, when your turn comes, you are there only for about 30 seconds. You take a quick photograph, and it's a small little painting which you wouldn't have noticed otherwise. But when you start reading up about it, or I think my artist friends would know more, at least I had to read up about it, and then I realized that how much innovation was there and groundbreaking things he had done. You see, besides listing out a large number of things as innovations in painting, by the way, he never finished his painting. He would he had to sell off many paintings to his patrons because that is the way he made money. But this is a painting, and no one even knows who he was painting. There are theories that it was a daughter of a merchant, but he carried with him to his deathbed. He never sold off this painting because he was working on it for years and years. In fact, he used to lose commissions. He was such a perfectionist that if he started a job, he would keep on doing it, doing it, doing it, and many of his famous commissions were left incompleted, and he used to lose money. But he was a perfectionist. Now, what is I mean, as a layperson, I can only share with you that one of the three major things he does is that earlier all his contemporary painters, they were when they were doing the portraiture, they would draw the outline of everything, but he developed a very beautiful technique called sfumato, smoke like. I'll be showing you where the border lines are not drawn sharply, but they are almost like merging. And so there is a smoke like mysterious, you know, sort of quality to to his painting. And then he would go into detail of every, he would keep on painting curtains with light and shadow, light and the fold, with such precision that it would take him, days and days, that how light affected. And then this third thing he developed was that although perspective was being tried by other people also, but here you can see that in the background he realized that when things, if you want to bring in distance in a painting, then the foreground, the thing in focus has to be done in detail, but the background you shouldn't you don't see the details. And the colors also change because of there is air, there is a refraction of light. So these are the three remarkable things he did about, and that's why it is the most famous painting. He went on to make many more paintings. Some of them were collaborative also. But this technique of vanishing like smoke, what is called as fumoto, I might be pronouncing it wrong. These are some of his other very important paintings. Salvador Mundi, which is the Jesus, with the sign of cross and the orbit, you know. And this was his last painting, John the Baptist. And he's showing the way that the earth and heavens is, because there is we are connected to the cosmos, and after death we all go to that. But and there is an amused expression also. These are all very enigmatic expressions, because he believed that painter should not just make the outer appearance, he should try to portray the inner thoughts of the subject of the portrait. And you can see that Jesus has those divine look in his eyes. And this was a very early a painting called Madonna with the carnation. There's a flower. Now look at, if he can make adults so beautifully, Look at the baby fat, the folds of the limbs, and the baby is fascinated by the carnation flower, and the benign mother, indulgently looking at the baby, and the background of, distant horizons. Look at the folds. So you see, my artist friends will know more about these things, and I tried imitating some paintings in my early years to just factually correct, and they were so horrible that I had to, hide them in the attic. Look at the curls, so he was a master of light and shade. Now this is one of the world. This is the world's most famous mural. It's 30 feet wide, and it is in Milan Cathedral in the dining hall refectory. And you see, this is Jesus' last meal, and it's a what is known as the narrative painting, because you can see that people are actually either talking or gesturing to one another, and but why is it so famous? One is that it's a narrative painting. This is the biblically that says that this is the dinner last feast. Next day he was crucified, and he's saying, telling his apostles that one of them will betray him, and the commotion, the hush hush, and is so. Now the other thing is that Leonardo also mastered the art of perspective. Other artists were also in Renaissance time, they were experimenting with perspective, but here was a man who developed it to such a great extent that he uses it to his. This is a huge 30 feet by some feet mural, and it is in a room which is a dining hall, not a very large room. Now he takes up, sorry, he takes up such an he takes Jesus as the vanishing point of the linear perspective, one point, and every so the eye goes toward the Jesus, and the other thing is that the vantage point, or from where the perspective is seem to be seen, is not from the human eye level but a higher point, so that you can see under the table also the feet of the eye, and you can see the top of the table with the dishes also. So he uses perspective as a tool to illustrate his own uh, ideas or what he wants to highlight. Corbusier, he started, of course, as an art student in La Chaux, and his early painting is more like landscapes of Jura mountains. But later on in Paris, he started the Cubism with Picasso and other Cubist painters. That was a tide of high time of Cubism in Spain. Paris was the place where it was all happening. But Corbusier found a kindred soul in another painter called Ozenfant Amedy, and they both together established a new style of painting. They debunked this cubism as something, gimmickry, irrational, romantic, and they said this as exaggerations of, various facets of an ordinary thing, and they went to a very minimalist kind of, you just draw the outlines of and the pure form of things as they were existing, and they started a new movement called purism, which of course they didn't pursue for long. And then Corbusier also went in more for abstractions and surrealism. This is actually his mural in his office, which is was for during a very big exhibition. It was not brought from there, but a replica of it was made. One of the biggest exhibitions of his works I was fortunate to see was in 2013 when they celebrated 125 years of Le Corbusier's birth at the Museum of Modern Art in New York. And they also organized a seminar. So I was very lucky to see that. It was the biggest exhibition of Corbusier's works. Now, our good old Cobb, what is he not? Of course, he's not as prolific or as prodigious or as multifaceted or as much of a polymath as uh, Leonardo was, but he's pretty big, and he can do bas reliefs, he would do tapestries, paintings, sculpture, and his architecture was almost poetic in form, and they looked like more like sculptures than. And where is art, and where are the boundaries between art and architecture? Everything, and we are so fortunate that we have it all in Chandigarh. Even the lights of the Sukna Lake promenade are redesigned. Yeah, here is a city where the manhole covers are also designed. The furniture were also designed. So he's a person who's like a plenipotentiary, a polymath in true spirit. At least one can say that those times were simpler now. Somebody who is researching, we'll come to that debate at the end. Now look at he applies art and science in architecture, and I've taken only Chandigarh example. You know, uh, who else would use such bold colors to break the monotony of concrete? Paint a 25 feet by 25 feet near huge door, enamel door himself. Create tapestries which study the movement of the sun in a 24-hour day in the around the year, and there is a create a monument out of this movement of the 24-hour solar path. Create a monument out of study of scientific study of what would be the position of the sun on a particular day in a particular around the year at a particular time, and how the ingress of the sun can be blocked by sunbreakers, which he called brise soleil. So I'll speed up now because although Deepika is kind enough not to time me, but I think I value and respect. Now, another, you see, there are so many aspects of such people. He even created a system of creating what he called architectural polygamy. That how colors could be bunched together for harmony. He actually was doing a lot of. There was a Swiss wallpaper company called Celubra or something. So he said that why don't you start? He made piano cards, and where harmonic colors could be clubbed together for guidance of the would-be user. And also if he wanted to highlight a contrast, which he made keyboards. Is a I have in my personal collection a 3 volume set of books on his polychromy. So there are books on modular, and I can't and not at all claim that I have understood the modular fully. So there is enigmas within enigmas, because he was very gave a lot of importance to color. He wrote that color influences spatial effects, and in turn influences how we view things. So our sensories, our experience of space or architecture is very much influenced by color. Then the like Da Vinci Code, Da Vinci Code picture में था कि पता नहीं क्या उसने कुछ secret रखा हुआ है, and the Holy Grail can be found, but that was all work of fiction. Leonardo's only mysterious. What is Da Vinci Code? Da Vinci Code was one that he wrote in mirror script, so it was considered as something very secretive. The other is that him for himself, he set up standards of knowing more and more deeply. He was a perfectionist who would not stop at knowing this much. He had to go deeper and deeper. His study of the human valve, the heart valve, is so brilliant that today's scientists are actually doing heart surgeries by looking at them, and they have derived. These are all documented things. You can look up the books, and I suggest one book which I'll share with the end. Now look at the mysteries of Corbusier. Science in that movie Da Vinci Code. Professor Lingdo is the professor of symbology in Harvard. So that was a fictitious character, but I can tell you that every time I go to the Capitol complex, I'm trying to ascertain meanings of putting the bullock cart, the open hand, and the symbols that he has over there in the bas relief, in the chaff of grain. So there are mysteries and mysteries. which he left them as signposts for the generations to come. And I'm now coming to the end of my presentation. You know, when he died, Da Vinci, his list of things to do, we all create a little list of, this is only 1/100th of what more he wanted to do. What is the distance from the eyebrow to the junction of the lip, and why are the stars visible at night? And so he had the curiosity of a child. How do the branches of a tree compare with the thickness of a trunk? How long? And one of the I found very amusing. How long is the tongue of the woodpecker? Why would a man like to know that? He was not a foolish chap, because woodpecker is one word. Because I have a passing interest in ornithology, I looked at these things in detail. The woodpecker actually has a very long tongue. Why it has a long tongue? Because with his beak he pecks at the boles in the tree, and the worms or the insects which are dwelling deep into that gap, his tongue is so long that it can go and coop, like a scoop that up. And then now the long tongue also is after all, woodpecker is a small bird. He has to usko andar bhi to kahin sambhal ke rakhna hai. How do you store such a long tongue? Actually, the tongue folds up, and his head is bigger in size. It folds up and goes and like being put in a cupboard. And when the need is, he can take it out. So it was not that he was foolish. He knew that there was science to everything. And Corbusier's words, of course, we are all familiar. His the prophet, these words that ring are often quoted. But what I like is I prefer drawing to talking. Drawing is faster and leaves less room for lies. So I find this, because the man had been suffered so many, deceptions and, what you call politics, that he wrote that. And so now this is the end of the, very interestingly, as in life, in death also, their graves are not too far apart. It would be as the crow flies, because Leonardo, towards the end of his years, he got a job with the King of France, who was very big admirer, and there were not many commissions for the old man in Italy. So he went to live on with the King of France, and he died at one of the king gave him a chateau at a place called Clue. I looked at the Google map in Loire Valley, and he died and is buried in a small village church, which was actually blown away during the Second World War, but his grave is intact. And Corbusier, when he and his wife had died, he also, his last resting space is along the French Riviera, the Provence era, coast. And so, if though he was in Italy, was he all his Karam Bhumi was Italy, and his Corbusier he was born as a Swiss in Jura Mountains. His resting place is in France, and Leonardo's resting space is also in Florence, and uh, they are in close proximity, as in the ways of their life, in their destiny, and also in death, in resting space. So, with this, I come to the end of my presentation. Now, I will come out of the screen, and we can uh, have a little discussion. So their personal lives are also sort of a whole lot of commonalities. So it's like a act of destiny or a act of providence. Now I would say that in the end, some of the questions that I let me get, uh, you know, the questions that rankle in my mind before others come in for that, why, after all, what is the genius? Is it to be multifaceted and be curious about everything and have many talents? Or is it to be a one-point genius? These days, if there is a super specialist, if somebody is looking at the black hole, then he's just, going on, and he is not having any other knowledge. But many of the other geniuses, like they had passing interests. Einstein was a great musician also, and similarly, there have been other people with some talents, but they were not creators or they were not the frontline geniuses in multiple areas. Is it because the technology is now too difficult and those were simpler time, or is it that the quality of mind, and is it what is more important for the world? Is it to have a curious mind, connect the dots, and have a fuller vision of the world, a view, and a childlike curious mind? I don't know about the bigger questions, but I can tell you one can enjoy life much more if you have a number of interests. And in this COVID era, if like everyone else, our geography shrunk, the world became our home, our neighborhood, and our laptop or the books. And during the COVID era, I developed this idea much more by reading a whole lot of things. So it has given me a lot of enrichment. And so with this personal, observation, a personal note, I come to the end of my talk, and I thank you all very much for bearing with me. And I will leave it to Deepika to take it from here.
Thank you so much, sir. I think I can, I think a round of clap is in order because we can't really feel that physical presence nowadays. But I must say, sir, the amount of research you have done, the parallels you have drawn, or even the facts you have brought out about them independently, it is actually mind boggling. And we really thank you for the amount of research you have done for this one lecture. You could have just, picked the very obvious things, taken the very obvious parallels, and just given a lecture on that. But thank you so much for, because the main aim of a lecture like this is to engage the audience and to create curiosity to learn more. As you kept saying that we can't really cover the lives and work of two geniuses in one lecture, but what would be really wonderful would be that if people who are there in this presentation, if we could go back and we could just um, try to find out more about these things, because I definitely have a list of things now I have to find out. Okay, like even very small things like the human anatomy and how they related to each other. It's a very obvious kind of thing, but then you go into the depth of it, and it's actually very amazing. And for just say my main aim actually was like even for Bhim sir to get students on board, and if not students, then we can all follow this thing that you said, this prodigious compulsive observer. So when I went through the sketchbooks of Corbusier, I realized that you have summed it up so well that it is amazing what all he observed and how meticulously he then captured it in his sketchbook. I mean, I see the same in Da Vinci's, I think without sketching, without putting your mind to it all the time. So this one phrase, that the prodigious compulsive observer, जो आप कह रहे थे ना about how do we create these multifaceted people, I think it all comes down to that. Like even in the last, I had heard a lecture of yours on R.K. Narayan and Lakshman, R.K. Lakshman. How do they come out to be so creative from the same family? And they say that all they did was observe people around them. So I think this aspect of observation is the most important thing. But I think now I would like to open the floor to our participants. If anyone has any questions, anything you want to discuss, or any thing that you want to know more about, please, the house is open to your questions now.
Deepika Gandhi, I would like to say some words.
Handy, sir.
Congratulations, Professor Rajnish Wattas. It was a very engaging talk, and your background knowledge is something to be appreciated about. The good side is that uh, you talked about Corbusier and you talked about uh, Leonardo da Vinci, and you did draw some parallels. Uh, well, very good, very interesting, very engaging. But then I was wondering right at the beginning, uh, when you structured your uh, talk or lecture, that how is going to do it, because there's a gap of about 500 years between the two characters. And your first question in the poster, I thought you were going to talk about something like that Le Corbusier was a reincarnated soul or a genius of Leonardo da Vinci, but that was to be very difficult enterprise. And but you found a way out, uh, uh, media in between. But all said, I mean, I would wonder that isn't that for isn't the too far drawn parallels. I would very much like to have a comparison, for example, of the people of the same era. For example, Michelangelo, which I hold him in very high esteem, and vis-a-vis Leonardo da Vinci. The two had a gap of about 23 years. I mean, Leonardo was senior to him. In the sense they are contemporary. Not really, but they are, because Leonardo died late and he died at something like 67. But then he was a genius in his own right. He was a great sculptor and a painter too. Why not? The two comparisons would have been better, and in fact, more so because uh, the two were always in a tiff, you know, like the adversaries have, always living in the same age. Uh, because you missed a very good project of Leonardo da Vinci, that was the horse, three-storied horse, 27 feet high or something like that. And Michelangelo will always tease him about that. You are the quitter. As you rightly said, he was a quitter. Great geniuses are quitter, take up the project and then they leave the project in between without completing it. So that was his particular trait. So he would chide him on that you are a quitter, and he would say something like that to him. So likewise, those comparisons would have been more in place rather than, comparing them 5 centuries uh, after. That was the one issue that really came to me. So that is at the generic level of the structuring of the talk. And the second is, yeah, you did talk about, the mirror language, the mirror writings. That was a common practice in that era, the warriors would do that so that the secret is maintained. And I would leave it there. Thank you.
Anil, thanks for a very enlightened comment. To answer two of your things, of course you're right. That the eras, but the whole point was that some people are polymaths. Eras apart. That is the what created the interest in me. कि 500 साल पहले एक आदमी इस तरह का है, and then the world moves on for 5 centuries, and then you get another person is that, and it is since Corbusier is in our city, he is in our DNA. So this was to create. And regarding Michelangelo, and of course they were peers. And but I, to the taunt that you said about the horse, which was no, this was a commission which he was given by the Duke of Milan. And actually, the horse model he had created. He had done the engineering also.
In the clay.
Yeah, it would have been. Yeah. I'm talking about a model. It would have been done, maybe or maybe not, if France had not, done they had done the King of France attacked Milan, and everybody had to flee, including Leonardo. So Sforza, who was Ducal of Sforza, who was the Duke of Milan, he had to pick up his things, and the horse was violently broken by the soldiers. So but it's a fact. Leonardo was a perfectionist who would not complete things. He would lose commissions. He said, "I don't mind, but I have to be." It's like a perfectionist. He says, "कि भाई मेरे को तसल्ली नहीं हुई, मैंने नहीं काम खत्म करता." Now that is the, you can say, the non-worldly side of many idealistic professionals. So maybe another lecture on another. Uh, my point was only that
I know.
art architecture.
It's
Professor
so
Wattas,
interesting.
Can we
Yeah.
Yeah.
come in? Some quick
Yeah,
question.
please.
We've
Yeah,
had
yeah.
lots of this. My question is, sorry, Anil, I'm coming
No,
in.
it's okay. I had my share.
Okay. Now, my question was, has anywhere it been documented that Corbusier took some inferences from Leonardo da Vinci? Or you have
Yes.
done the interpretation?
Look, there is a mention of the Vitruvian man in his modular. Now, Vitruvian man, as the term has come, it was first of all, thought of by Vitruvius in 80th century BC, the Roman thinker and philosopher. There is a relationship between human proportions. Actually, they say that the distance between the chin and the head, Dr. Nirja is there, so I am honored. She can correct me. Is according to Leonardo, it was 1/10 of the total human body, and the difference between the tip of the nose, the arm, the elbow, there is a complete huge data which Leonardo, he actually was a fanatic chap. उसने अपने स्टूडियो में वर्कशॉप में he got many young men to come with perfect bodies, and he would keep on taking their measurements, recording them. Then he came through. There are illustrations which are there. So
Sir,
Corbusier, when he developed the modular,
Sarji,
there is a mention of the golden ratio, and there is a mention of the Vitruvian man.
Sarji,
I'd
मेरा
like to
That is
question,
all I know.
my question is, did Corbusier actually have any documentation to say he took knowledge from Leonardo da Vinci?
I don't think there is
Uh,
one, but
I can't
Professor
answer
Wattas,
that.
let me add in here. We had our own, I mean, in the Indian system, we have our own Purusha Mandal. Isn't it right?
Yeah, Vastu Purusham.
And we're talking of the old age, I mean, how many years? About 4,500 years. So to say that the Europeans uh, or the English, they were better off, the better off thinkers, I don't think that is well placed. And secondly, uh, I don't think, Michelangelo, don't mind my saying it, but if you really see how the word flew by, and in retrospect, even today, we don't have anything or any technology which has grown out of his thoughts or of his sketches, perhaps just the heart, description that how it pumps and how it gets the, the other blood back without the oxygen, and it oxygenates and then sends it back. I don't think it has been applied anywhere. It's not been
No,
useful
no,
in
no,
new
no.
technology.
I'll correct you. Among a few things that I know, the his anatomical sketches have inspired the present day anatomists, because and the artists. The heart walls that he observed, they have been actually used in surgery. I can give you the details later on. I have read about it.
I doubt it.
No, no, no. Yes, yes, yes. I can. Why would you doubt something which is mentioned in the
With the
national?
scans available, PET
No,
scans
no, no,
available, I
no,
mean, who cares now?
no, no. Heart wall, the construction of the heart wall.
Right, it's understood. I mean, you see and you check it,
That
and it's
actually.
there now.
Well, you have to take my word for it. I can post the pages from National
That's
Geographic.
fine. That's fine. I will bring my views.
No, I mean factually and views are different. Views can be varied,
No,
but
no, the
the
point
facts
is,
are there.
what what point of time we are talking? If you're talking of the old times, yes. But today, technology is so advanced, you know,
I am talking about today's
it has,
cardiologists
it,
doing cardiac
it
surgeons
has,
doing. Anil, listen to me. Today's cardiac surgeons taking cues from his studies of the human heart valve. That actually can be posted to you, posted to everyone.
I
Period.
would like to see that. But technology is so advanced, somebody who's putting up a goal, I mean, a hockey player or anybody, his rate, uh, his heartbeat is being noticed, on the top, and they tell now this is a fit, he's unfit.
So actually, I don't really understand what we are debating over here, because no one is saying that what he did 500 years back is supposed to be relevant even today, and that is how the genius is defined. By that
No, I'm
definition,
talking,
any building which is
Deepika,
made
sorry to
500 years
interrupt you.
back.
I'm talking of the very relevance of two comparisons, spread out contextually, spread out, in time.
I don't think so.
Okay.
We need to
Chalo,
justify
it's
that
okay.
and not
It is his
pinpoint
viewpoint,
to
it's
the
his
date.
Yeah,
observation.
exactly.
I
This is
think
my
let us
opinion.
have
And
the,
I said it very
uh, uh,
plainly, frankly,
yeah,
two
yeah.
good things and bad things
No, no, it's
happen in
okay.
life.
Welcome. You're welcome. You're welcome. Any other? Let's leave the floor for any other people.
May I say something, Deepika,
Yeah.
if I'm
Hanji
allowed?
Ratnaji, welcome.
Mr. Wattas, I would really like to thank you for such a beautiful presentation. And actually, it is very difficult to imagine how you, I mean, it's kind of, mm, try to make meet two eras, which was a very difficult task, and how you found the parallels between the two giants, and you slowly, gradually brought them together. And it was a wonderful journey going through these creators' life. And you made us familiar with many aspects of their lives, more familiar, especially about Leonardo, because being this part of the world, though I've seen his painting Mona Lisa in Louvre, but of course we don't know much about the artist. And it was a wonderful presentation. And I wish you could speak at least 1 more hour, as Deepika said, because you had prepared so much, but probably you took very little time. And I think this kind of topic and this kind of preparation needs a bigger frame of time. And maybe the next time when Deepika does something similar, she would give us a, because the kind of people are attending this lecture are very keen, and they really want to, they're curious, as you said, we all have a child's mind, and we really would like to have more and more things to be asked and to be known from you. So I think congratulations and many compliments to you, and thanks to you at the same time. And I hope we have such more presentations from you in times to come with a larger frame of time. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you very much. May I request Dr. We have in our gathering a very distinguished person and doctor. So I think the doctor is the best person to get comment on a man like Leonardo, who is a father of human anatomy. Dr. Nija, I would be honored if you had some observations or some thoughts.
Hi Rajnish, hi Deepika.
Hello, ma'am.
That was a very beautiful lecture, and definitely, even though I am not an architect, neither am I an artist, but creativity and creations and the way Leonardo has actually uh, worked on the golden ratios and the triangles and the Vitruvian man, those are very fascinating. As far as I'm concerned, as a medical doctor, I have actually looked at a lot of Leonardo's paintings just from this aspect. How has he done the ratios in his own paintings? And it is so fascinating because I don't think he must have done them deliberately. This must be one third of this or this or this. Yet his paintings, why are they so famous to me? I'm just a layperson. It's because something about them is so beautiful. And what was that? Is that he has done it according to these ratios. And why both these two giants, for me, this particular lecture has been so fascinating, is because they are not connected. They are not, the latter one is not probably not influenced. How do we know, or how do I know? Yet, two giants in their own fields have worked on similar things, and it's very fascinating. So, thank you for that,
Thank
Rajneesh and
you.
Deepika. I loved
Uh,
it.
I'm honored. I'm honored.
Thank you so much, sir.
Yeah.
Ma'am, sir. No, actually, I think, ma'am, you have summed up very well what we were trying to do. We were not trying to prove that Corbusier was a reincarnation of Leonardo da Vinci, or he was a disciple, or he was directly inspired. And I see this a lot. I think that is the whole problem with the way we approach things. For example, if you see music, you will find many people researching on how did maybe the first symphony that was made, how is it now being reflected in the modern music? Or people are trying to find parallels between hip hop and foxtrot, that it has the same rhythm, it has the same beat. So now it would be ridiculous to say, अरे वो तो 200 साल पुराना था, ये तो अभी 200 contemporary है बिल्कुल. That is how humans evolve. That is how progress has happened. That someone took something, analyzed it in the past, and put it in the present, and then tried to derive a relation between them, and not even a forced relation, a very obvious one as we see over here. So, and I think not everything has to make sense sometimes. Like for example, I may actually compare. Like people have even compared the work of M.F. Hussain to cave paintings. Now, you may say that's a very ridiculous assumption. How can you compare the work of M.F. Hussain with a cave painting? But if you realize there are so many, I mean, he breaks it down to the most basic component, very basic colors. So I think this is how learning happens. And as I keep telling my students, that learning is not about that this is A and this is B. It's all about that A plus B can maybe create C. That is what research should be all about, and that is what. And the more we go into details like this, the more connections we form. And as I was saying in the starting, that that is what the national education policy is trying to do now, to make these holistic youngsters. As we were saying, why don't we have people like that now? Because we are actually putting ourselves into boxes which we don't
Yes,
want to come out of. And it's
yes.
not till we
Deepika,
come
that's
out of our
very
boxes.
debatable. That's very debatable, but maybe on a later date.
Yeah.
I'll
So
just
now,
like to make two short, bring to everyone's attention that Leonardo also created a musical instrument,
yes.
which was a combination of the like a viola, the string instrument, and a keyboard instrument. And he left drawings for it. And that instrument actually then has been built by a present day great musician, and it was played. And that sound combined the two different tonalities in a very interesting way. Now, of course, nobody is doing commercial production. It was experimental thing. So this is one of his many innovations which are still to be explored. And there was a
No voice, no sound.
Must be an internet issue.
Yeah. Okay, in the meantime, is there anyone else who has any question or anything you would like to share or discuss?
There's just one point
Yeah.
I just wanted to share. You know that painting of that Last Supper?
Mm-hmm.
I just wanted to make a comment about that. You know that between Jesus in the center, tilted to one side, and that other person
Yeah.
is tilted like this. There is a theory to say that that was deliberate. That
Yeah.
space which Leonardo left like this, he
Mm-hmm.
left that space in that painting that was deliberate, and that was to indicate the womb. So that
Oh.
space, yes, that space actually indicated the womb, and Jesus was probably telling all his followers that give importance to it was not just an empty space, it was Madeleine. So that space, uh, he's just trying to say that give importance to that space because he was in love with, and actually the it never came out because that was something which was little anti-religion, but this is what people do interpret that as.
Just on the phone with Professor Wattas. He had a small park cut, so he's joining us back. But in the meantime, yes, ma'am. In fact, मैं तो सर को बोल रही थी कि जो लास्ट सपर वाली पेंटिंग है ना, this has fascinated me for a long time, and especially when I joined architecture and when we are taught about perspective. And we were
Hmm.
lucky enough to have a teacher who did not start with a typical cube or a typical form that we get. And that teacher actually taught us how perspective is used throughout paintings to create emphasis. Like how,
Hmm.
I was telling sir that I read somewhere that even the folds on the sheet that you see in
Hmm.
front of the table, even
Hmm.
they align with the roof pattern on the top. And when you take
Hmm.
all those lines together, they how they sort of focus all your attention on Jesus Christ, and even the
Yes,
color
in
scheme
the
and the
center.
so
Yeah.
many things like that. How in his paintings, I mean, if you go into his paintings, of course, we're not trying to like say that we don't have to prove that he was a genius. Of course, he was, and his paintings say that. I mean, you see that in every of his painting, in the composition, and I think hundreds of books have been written about it. So I think we don't really need to now in this forum try to prove that, oh yes, he was a genius and nothing will come out of it, because it's an established fact for that. So I think Professor Wattas will be joining us in a little time. In the meantime, then I would request Mr. Bhim Malhotra, Chairman of the Lalit Kala Academy, to please share his thoughts on this presentation, and please also extend the thank you note.
So, good evening, everyone. So, first of all, from Chandigarh Lalit Kala Academy, I will thank all the eminent personalities and art lovers who have joined this session. And this session was very special. The two legends of their times, Leonardo da Vinci and Le Corbusier. And I think can't be best combination from this. Deepka, I congratulate you for this presentation and the idea of this presentation. And we are the partner. We feel honored. And I also feel thanks to Professor Rajnish Wattas, who has a special thing I have found in Professor Rajnish Wattas. Whatever he give presentation, he has deep study, deep research, and this was very interesting, interesting session and very informative session. And this was the first time, Deepka, I will say कि I have come to know many similarities between two legends. और एक चीज मैं शेयर करना चाहूंगा कि आज आई एम फीलिंग वेरी स्पेशल ऑन दिस डे ऑफ प्रेजेंटेशन. आज 7 नवंबर 2020 and 7 November 2019, I was in Louvre Museum, Paris. And on the day of today, I saw this Mona Lisa. And I would like to share something. जैसे भी आप लूर म्यूजियम में, आज के दिन में वहीं पे ही था मैं, तो जैसे आप पूरा म्यूजियम आप घूमते हैं, तो देयर आर big sizes painting, 10 by 20 feet, even 20 by 30 feet. सडनली आप एक ऐसी जगह पे पहुंच जाते हैं जहाँ काफी सारा रश है. आदमी देखता है, पहले तो आदमी इसी चक्कर में घूमता रहता है कि मोनालिसा किधर, वेयर इज मोनालिसा, वेयर इज मोनालिसा. एक जगह आप ऐसे पहुंचते थे, बहुत रश, बहुत रश. तो वहां अचानक हम पहुंचे, देखा दिस इज द प्लेस मोनालिसा. तो उसका साइज जो है, आई थिंक हम काफी सारे आर्टिस्ट, आर्ट लवर सोचते हैं शायद पता नहीं कितना बड़ा साइज होगा. तो आई थिंक 2 by 24 by 30 inches, हार्डली दिस साइज. एंड द बात साइज की नहीं है, बात है कि जैसे सर बात कर रहे थे कि परफेक्शनिस्ट, तो काफी द वे जिधर भी आप जाते हैं उधर ही आपको मोनालिसा दिख रही है. द वे जो परफेक्शनिस्ट आई से जो पेंट किया हुआ है, all over he was Corbusier and this Leonardo da Vinci, both were perfectionist. और काफी सारी सिमिलरिटीज जो प्रोफेसर वत्तस ने जो अपना प्रेजेंटेशन में दिखाया है, वो आई एम, so we all are very blessed with these all the details he has shown. And I am very thankful to Professor Wattas for this wonderful presentation. And I think लियोनार्डो दा विंची के नाम से तो एयरपोर्ट भी है वहां पे. सर ऑनलाइन है सर? यस सर, वी आर वेरी ब्लेस्ड विद योर प्रेजेंटेशन एंड इट वाज वंडरफुल प्रेजेंटेशन. एंड सबसे बड़ी बात आपकी है, मैं दोबारा से रिपीट कर रहा हूँ कि आपके टॉपिक बड़े इंटरेस्टिंग होते हैं, आपकी स्टडी बड़ी इंटरेस्टिंग होती है, आपकी रिसर्च बड़ी इंटरेस्टिंग होती है, और आपका सारी प्रेजेंटेशन बड़ी इंटरेस्टिंग होती है. तो वंस अगेन लॉट ऑफ कांग्रेचुलेशन. Thank you very much, Deepka and Rajnish Wattas.
Most welcome, sir. So thank you very much, Professor Wattas, and thank you, Bhim sir, and thank you to all our participants. In case we don't have any other point anyone wants to discuss or share, then I think we can call an end to this wonderful evening. And it's actually
Deepika, I'd like to put some words to Dr. Chawla here. Lord, Dr. Chawla, it was interesting. Your comments were very interesting. I happened to interact with somebody on Facebook, he had put up a picture of presumably some devotee of Lord Shiva. And exactly above his chest, if you really saw it with great care, you would find that it was Nandi Bull's, the front, the face. And he questioned, why is it there? Well, it was there because, as you rightly said, a place the sculptor found was befitting for dearest of Shiva, that is the Nandi bull. So sculptors' minds work very, very differently. And again, because I see Professor Rajnish Wattas here in the screen, I would also like to add to his comments. In India, we have wonderful, modular and other things. And whole temple architecture, I just happen to be studying some. Whole temple architecture is based on that, and we don't care about it. It's, for example, the sculptures that we have, the Indian sculpture, we always see a movement, how they stand, how they put the weight on the one leg, 1 foot, and then distribute it on the other. This is very realistically done. And if you draw the thread right from the nose to the head to the bottom of your toe finger, they're aligned. Sometimes just try to analyze those. And those are something like 4,500. Now it's said that it is 8,000 years old civilizations.
Since
With
you
the latest
addressed this to
techniques.
me, may I comment on this?
Of course, with the permission.
Yeah, the point is, sir, it's like this, that I actually don't get your point. That is the point. Because I have come to attend something which is about two legends, Leonardo and Le Corbusier. Le Corbusier, Professor Wattas is an expert on that. This is my view, that he's an expert on that. And then he's telling us about how amazing Leonardo was. And he finds some similarities between these two. And I find that very, very interesting.
Of course,
Really,
yeah, but I'm
really.
cutting you short.
But no, please,
We're
please,
talking of the sculpture.
I need to
All
finish.
right, take your time.
Because when you talk about the sculptures in India, how beautiful that, there's no doubt about it. There's no doubt about the fact that all artists, all sculptors, all creative people are all very beautiful. There is something so amazing about people who are creative, but that is another story. I don't know how it is, how Indian sculptor
I
just
thought
now
we were
is
doing a
relevant.
discussion.
No, I didn't think it was very relevant. That's all.
No, you talked of sculpture of Christ holding up a space in between. I
That
just
was
therefore
that
drew a
painting,
parallel.
reference to the painting which Professor Wattas actually showed. It was just something where an interesting aside that I had read, that there was a purpose for that space, and painters are so amazing people. They, because we historians believe that there was some connection between Leonardo and Jesus Christ, and that he was party to some of his secrets. So he created that space. Otherwise, I am looking at that painting and I'm wondering, why is this gap there? And then you suddenly realize that the painter has done this for a purpose. I just shared that. It was in
Yeah,
connection with that.
I was
Uh, uh,
universalizing the
Yeah,
creativity. That's all.
yeah. Don't take me so seriously. I am just trying to share my excitement, and please don't take me as a prophet of art history or so. I'm a fun person. I'm very honored by another very distinguished Dr. Neerja Chawla, as everyone knows. Dr. Chawla was the director of PGI, and she's a distinct, very, very eminent, this gynecologist. And doctor, there is another very distinguished person, doctor from, I think PGI doctors are polymaths, they have got interest in so many things. Dr. AK Mandal, my friend, and a great doctor who's at the AIMS now. Sir, good evening and hello to you, and some wise words from you. Hello. I think maybe he has left.
I don't see him now, sir, I think.
I think he has left.
Yeah.
Okay. Uh, so that's fine. And let me tell you that I'm enjoying all the responses, regardless, because the whole idea was that I'm not Dr. Encyclopedia.
No, sir,
Uh,
we are not supposed to. In fact, I think as any teacher would attest to it, that we are meant to stir conversations like these. We are meant to sort of create points at which people disagree, agree, and they start, like, what Nehru said about Chandigarh, that I don't like everything, but it hits you on the head and it makes you think. So, just to have a debate running, and I agree with the point of Madam Neerja Chawla, Dr. Neerja Chawla, that just because you praise one thing, and I think this is becoming a trend all over the world now, that if you have to take sides. I don't see why you have to take sides. Like, just because I like English music does not mean I do not like AR Rahman. Okay, I mean, so I don't understand this thing, that why do we have to take sides just because I'm discussing something. And because funnily, the last presentation that we held on this very forum was about the restoration of temples in Mysore and Bijapur. So, it's not as if we are just pandering to a European theme or whatever. Just 2 weeks back, we had presentations on how Mysore's heritage is being conserved, how the temples are so amazing, and what all they are finding. So, as I said in the starting, that we're trying to cover all topics. And of course, praising one thing does not mean that you're putting one another thing down, or that you have to find parallels, or you have to force a conversation on that. But on that note, I think I would like to thank everyone for participating. And Professor Wattas, again, thanks to you for such a detailed and such a well-researched presentation, which has actually opened up so many issues. So I thank all of you, and I hope you all have a good evening, sir. Any last
uh,
words that you would like to?
no, no, on a lighter one, you know, what I have enjoyed most is that the discourse and the debate, and that was the intention.
Yeah.
And like James Bond, I wanted my martini stirred but not shaken. Huh? So, and the second thing is, I do hope America is elected as president while we are debating. Otherwise, on next Saturday, I'll hold you again till American president is.
I know, I know.
So I think we can all now go back to our fun days. Thank you, Dr. Chavla. Thank you, all my
Thank you,
distinguished
sir.
friend, Dr. B. Malhotra,
Thank you,
for
sir. Thank you, sir.
organizing this beautiful lecture, and so many other. Sumit is there, my friends,
Sumit
and
ma'am, yeah.
our and thank you, Deepika, very much for you know. Mm, she's my co-conspirator in many academic ventures or misadventures, but we so I have to thank her also.
No,
Good
no,
night
it's not
and
privilege.
good luck.
Good night.
Okay, thank you everyone. Have a good night. Thank you.